1 week down, the World Cup is in full swing. This is your roundup of the first week of the Cricket World Cup 2019. Yes, we've had 9 games so far. Some teams have played 3 times. Some teams only played once. We're going to get into that a bit later. But let's just give you a rundown of what's happened so far. And for me, it's been an exciting start to this World Cup. Now, it's a World Cup where most expected, including myself, we're going to get runs galore. High scoring World Cup. Small boundaries, fast pitches, batsman's paradise. But so far, you have to say it's been anything but. Now, we've had some games where we've scored 300 plus, and the chasing team has also got 300 plus. But I don't think we've had any batsman paradise wickets that I expected. Of course, there's still a long way to go in the World Cup, depending on when you start in terms of the time, the conditions, etc. Who bats first and who doesn't, in terms of the strength of the batting lineups. Those big scores may come, but the first week, I would say it's been a bowler's tournament so far. Of course, it started with the host England against South Africa in the first game. England made 300, or South Africa restricted them, as I thought. I said to 300 because, one, I was expecting a lot of runs from the England side. And I would have said 300 was really par for this tournament. You aim for 300, I say par, minimum. You get 300 minimum. If you get anything less than that, you're struggling to defend it. But England didn't struggle at all. There wasn't no century in that 300, but there was a 80 odd from Ben Stokes. But then the bowling from England, you could say the poor batting from South Africa, as a combination, it resulted in a 100 run victory for England. Very, very comfortable. The highlight of that game obviously was, as you would be aware by now, that Ben Stokes catch. Some are saying the greatest catch in history, the history of cricket we've ever seen. Definitely in the World Cup, and most likely in one-day internationals or ever. I've seen some good ones. I've seen some great ones. There's the one that Jason Roy took, I think it was in the Bangladesh Premier League. You can search on YouTube. And then there's some other great ones. You know, when we first heard about, or when we first saw those catches where they're taking it and they're approaching the boundary edge and they throw it back in and then jump back in. When those first ones that were taken where it was really something innovative, those would have been up there. The ones now, players practice it. It becomes much of a norm. But this Ben Stokes catch, it flew. I think it was a slog sweep or something like that, and it flew at a very low trajectory down to the boundary, going for 6. And he took one hell of a one-handed catch. You see the crowd reaction behind. I mean, they have this thing called Play of the Day, and of course that won it. I would say that I'll be hard pushed if there was a better play of the tournament. The other big talking point from that game was Jofra Archer. He obviously made his World Cup debut for England, and he hit Hashim Amla on the helmet, sent him off, retired hurt. He did come back out, thankfully, but he missed the next game as he was still recovering. So he started the World Cup with a bang. I think he got 3 wickets. And England got off to the winning start that we expected. South Africa, I looked at that game and I said, they'll be lucky to get out of the group. I know it's only the top 4 and I didn't back them in the first place to get out of the group as a 1-4, but I said they'll be lucky because without staying, their attack, it's not one-dimensional, no, that's not correct. They've got Rabada, Ngidi, and of course Imran Tahir as the main spearhead. But I just felt it lacked, after Rabada, it lacked a bit of fire in terms of fearsomeness, something that batsmen are going to be scared to face. And I know Staines not the bowler that he was in terms of his pace, etc., but he's a very, very skillful bowler, world class. And then when he's not there, I think you can see the effects. As good as Imran Tahir is, as good as Ngidi is, even as good as Rabada is, you haven't got Staines there, it takes something away. And as it transpired later, he was unable to recover from his shoulder injury and he will miss the whole tournament. South Africa themselves have now played 3 games, the biggest shock of the tournament so far. And I use the term shock very loosely. Yes, they are 7th in the world, Bangladesh that is. And yes, they're not as a big a name as South Africa. But after that England performance, and then the injury, I think it was to Ngidi. Was Ngidi injured before that? After the England game? I think it was after the England game. Correct me if I'm wrong. I felt Bangladesh could win. Not would win, but I felt they could win because their spinners and their bowling is definitely their strength. So I felt if they can get a score over 300, South Africa will struggle. As it was, they got their highest ever score, 334, I think it was. 330, sorry, for 6. And South Africa really and truly were always behind the 8 ball. And they lost the game about 21 runs in the end. So that was the big shock. And we nearly got another one yesterday as well, actually. Afghanistan against Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, who were battered by 10 wickets in their first game against New Zealand. They've dropped down to 9th in the world rankings before this World Cup. And Afghanistan, who are 10th, they look set to get their first win in World Cup history, and that would have been a massive shock. Again, going into that game, I did say, especially after I saw what Sri Lanka did against New Zealand, I said, I'm not writing Afghanistan off. You can't write them off. With their spinners, Rashid Khan and is it Nabil? He must have got 3 wickets in an over, I think it was, in that game. But they gave away so many extras. I think over 20, probably near 30 extras in that innings, and allowed Sri Lanka in a rain-affected game to get up to 200. And they just fell short. I think in the end, they lost by 34 runs. That's the extras. Ill-disciplined bowling is really what cost them in the end. And so we didn't get that. What would have been probably, it would have been a massive upset. For the 2 nations, just as the name, Sri Lanka and Afghanistan, that would have been something massive. But it wasn't to be. But I do think throughout the tournament, Afghanistan will still trouble some other teams. Speaking of New Zealand, they, as I said, beat Sri Lanka by 10 wickets in the first game. Sri Lanka just couldn't handle the pace bowling mainly, and then the openers, they just blitzed that total. And then today they played Bangladesh again, and Bangladesh got bowled out for 244. They didn't complete the innings. I think it was about maybe an over left at max. I think it may have been an over left. And at that point, I think a few people were saying New Zealand look good, and their bowling looks good. But I said this game is far from over because of the quality of Bangladesh's bowling and also just the upward trajectory of this team. They are a confident team. They've beaten test play nations like West Indies in recent ODIs. They obviously beat South Africa in the first game. They're confident that in their bowling, and to even come so close, which they did, to restricting to New Zealand to under that score, to winning that game, taking 8 wickets that they did, and they should have had more. There was a run out of Kane Williamson when him and Ross Taylor's partnership, really was the defining partnership, where that just began, where the keeper broke the bell. He tried to collect the ball in front of the stumps and broke the bells before the stumps. The ball was in his hand, and that really, you could say, was the turning point of the game, because that partnership is what put Bangladesh really behind the 8 ball, and they were, swimming against the tide after that, even though they did get a lot of late wickets. I think there was a few I just think there were a few fielding errors. There was a catch. Was there a catch dropped? And then maybe the catch dropped as well in the innings as well. But I think Bangladesh will still get a few more wins. Definitely. I think West Indies have to be worried because we struggle to play spin. So when we come up against the spin of Bangladesh, it may be an issue. I think they will trouble some more teams in the tournament, and they are still an outside bet. Not my outside bet, but I would say the fifth team in terms of the race for top four. So the top four being India, England, Australia, and West Indies being fourth, Bangladesh fifth, Pakistan sixth. And I'm tossing between those three because from one result to the next, it could change. It really could. Speaking of Pakistan, we saw Pakistan in a nutshell in a few days. Destroyed by West Indies and came back emphatically against England. The result against West Indies and the manner of it would have been unexpected as much as the result against England, especially after England won their first game. I'll go into the West Indies Pakistan one in a bit more detail later, but the England-Pakistan put into bat, or I think they may have won the toss, and 348 for 8. And again, it's not a total that England haven't chased down before. As a matter of fact, they just had a series against Pakistan, and those 300 totals were being chased down regularly. They won the series 4-0. But it's a World Cup, it's tournament pressure. Pakistan come alive when it comes to a tournament. Forget everything else, and this is what we speak about, the inconsistency. From one game to the next, you don't know what you're going to get. And if you happen to turn up against Pakistan, how they were on that day, pumped up, they were playing with the fire that the supporters bring. We saw that. They're difficult to live with. Very much like West Indies, on their day, they can beat literally anyone. If they are at their best, they will beat anyone. No matter how the opposition plays, if they're at their best, they beat anyone. I would say mainly with Pakistan's bowling and West Indies with their batting. But when it all comes together, dangerous proposition. So that's why they both definitely got a chance of getting into the top four for the semi-finals. West Indies, first game we played against Pakistan, second game of the World Cup, and absolutely blew them away. Short pitch, fire in the Babylon, and they could not handle it. England then tried it again, Pakistan, and it just didn't have the same effect. I know they had Jofra Archer, but it just didn't have the same effect. Andre Russell, that spell when he came on and really shook up the Pakistanis and put a jump in every West Indian step. And O'Shane Thomas took 4 wickets in the end. Holder came back and took a few wickets. And then Gale hit a quick 50 to see us home. Nicholas Pooran, of course, he also got involved and had a good 30 odd of 20 odd balls to get us over the line very, very comfortably. 2 points on the board. And for me, that game, it pleased me because not just for the win, because obviously the win's important, and the manner of the win, yes, comfortable. But going to the World Cup for me was about the batting, in terms of if our batsmen fire, we can beat anyone, because I wasn't confident in the bowling. But if our bowling is on form, if our bowling does its job, we are an outside bet for this tournament. Because we bat all the way down to what? 8? Brathwaite, not even including Nurse. If our bowling fires, we can chase any total, or we can set any total, we can defend any total if our bowling fires. On that day, it fired. The question, obviously, there's 8 more games to go. When it comes to the spinners, the spin department, in the middle overs, We'll see how well they can fare. But if the fast bowlers are doing the job early on, then it makes life that much easier for the likes of Ashley Nurse. And if Chris Gale turns his arm over. Australia also got off to a winning start. They beat Afghanistan in their first game. Very, very comfortable victory, chasing down 208. And today was India's first game of the tournament. India's first game of the tournament, a week into the tournament. Playing South Africa in their third game of the tournament. Tell me how that makes sense. Now, I was trying to work out what's going on, because how can you get your scheduling so bad? England's played 2 games. Pakistan's played 2. Afghanistan, Bangladesh, New Zealand. I feel like I'm at Sri Lanka. All played 2 games. South Africa are playing their 3rd game. And this is India's first. It didn't make sense. So I had to read up on it, because I do have my issues with ICC and who runs the ICC. And how the powerhouses within the ICC dictate how cricket is run, who benefits from it across the world. Now we know that there's a big 3. The BCCI, CA, Cricket Australia. So the BCCI being the Board of Cricket Control for India, CA, Cricket Australia, and the ECB. But this takes the biscuit. This actually takes the biscuit. This is a World Cup event. Let me read what, and I have to read it. I have to read exactly what I found out. And I say allegedly, because it's not confirmed, but it said, according to reports, India were supposed to play their first match on June the 2nd against Bangladesh. But the International Cricket Council, ICC, changed the schedule at the request of the all-powerful Board for Cricket Control of India, BCCI. The BCCI source cited in the report said the board cited the guidelines of the Lodha Committee formed by the Supreme Court Clean-up Cricket Administration in India to get the ICC to push back the date of the first match. The Lodha Committee guidelines mandate, among other things, that India only play international cricket post a 15-day recovery period after the IPL, Indian Premier League. For the record, the final IPL final was held on May the 12th. So the recovery period would have ended on May the 27th, well in time for June, the 2nd match. According to the initial schedule, the final of the IPL was due to be held on May the 19th. 15 days from then would have been June the 3rd, so it would have fallen in the 15-day window. However, the dates of the tournament were revised to avoid clash with the general elections. But more importantly, why did the ICC heed to the BCCI's request? After all, the Lodha Committee guidelines are not binding on it. It could have always asked the BCCI to change the schedule of the IPL and domestic tournament and not tinker with the timetable of the World Cup. It goes on to speak about the financial implications and in terms of the BCCI and the ICC, how influential BCCI are for world cricket. This is a World Cup, an international global tournament that's been pandered to the needs of India. Is this even acceptable? This ain't acceptable. It's not acceptable. So you're gonna give India preferential treatment. You scared financially? What are they gonna do? Pull out the tournament? Well, let them pull out the tournament. This is a World Cup. The World Cup was here before India. Yes, India were playing, but who were India? When India won the World Cup in what? 1983. That was the biggest upset in cricket World Cup history. Probably still to this day. In the final, they beat West Indies, the 2 times back-to-back champions. The World Cup is not India. If India decided to pull out, then India pull out. But they wouldn't. The same way the ICC allowed, when they brought in Hawkeye, they allowed bilateral series in India to be played, or against India to be played without Hawkeye, whilst the rest of the world were using Hawkeye. You are the International Cricket Council. You're supposed to govern cricket for the world. You're supposed to set the rules, not India. So India have an 8-day hiatus after their warm-up game, while South Africa play 3 games in a week, having to deal with injuries on the back of a game. 2 days later, 3 days later, another game. 3 days later, another game. And they can't recover. And they go into their 3rd game without Steyn, of course. He didn't make it. Without Ngidi. Amla didn't play the 2nd game. Whereas India have 8-day rest. Now, yes, they may catch up later in the tournament, but 3 games in, South Africa are out of the tournament, pretty much. They have to win every game, and even then it's not guaranteed. It's not fair. It's not fair. I don't have an issue with India as a cricket team. I like some of their players. But for something like this, I for one hope they don't win the World Cup. It will leave a bitter taste in my mouth. The World Cup, ICC reschedules their fixtures to accommodate you. No, you should reschedule your IPL. You start it earlier. If you think your players need 15 days between the end of the IPL to the beginning of the World Cup. Additionally, it's not just Indian players playing the IPL. There's players from all of the other countries who are playing the IPL who weren't afforded that same 15-day grace period, or wouldn't have been. Obviously, as it was said, the IPL ended early anyway. The likes, we at West Indies, we played a tri-series before the World Cup. 8 of our players were at the IPL. They finished the IPL, they came ready for the World Cup. India have an 8-day break. Assess conditions. Assess teams who have played 2-3 games. They're fresh. Mentally and physically. That's not right. It's not right. It leaves a real sour, bitter taste in my mouth. I don't think it's the players' fault, so I'm not going to get onto them, but cricket, ICC needs to look at itself. Make a very hard look at itself. That's going to allow one board to dictate to them how global cricket should be run. I didn't like it. I don't like it. But as it is, India won the game. Very good performance, especially their bowlers. Jasprit Bumrah, he was on fire, accurate, fast, testing the batsman. The leg spinner Chalal, he got 4 wickets. Kuldeep Yadav, I think he picked up 2 as well. South Africa just couldn't handle it. They won the toss, they decided to bat because the first 2 games they were chasing and couldn't chase it down. But the batting is just not good enough. That's just the bottom line. The batting is not good enough to whether it's to set a target or to chase down a target. And for me, that means that they're not going to go through. They've got, I think it's Pakistan, they've got next possibly. And I know they definitely got West Indies on the 10th of June. West Indies, we play Australia Thursday, Nottingham. It's gonna be an interesting game. It could go either way. Again, it's just about which West Indies turns up. If we get, Gale on fire, Hope, Russell, we can we'll chase down any target. But Australia, they're a brilliant team. What can you say? They're a brilliant team. They've won 4 World Cups out of the last 5, 99, 2003, 2007 and 2015. They're not the same team that they were in all those tournaments, but they've got that winning mentality. They know what they have to do to get over the line. And I mean, a loss is not going to be the worst result, but a win, mentally, a win is massive. So, hope that we can get that win over in Nottingham. If we don't, we move on. We go to South Africa in the next game. But that's your World Cup roundup week 1. Advantage, New Zealand. 2 wins out of 2. South Africa on the brink of elimination. Make sure you check out my vlog from last game, a win against Pakistan. And check out my next vlog, which is coming out later, which is hopefully the win against Australia.